Hello, welcome to Movies I Love with yours truly, Nomfanelo. So, this video will be the conclusion of the Fast and Furious conversations I've had in the previous videos. So, here I'll be looking at the spin off Hobbs and Shaw, which is directed by David Leitch, who's known for directing films such as Atomic Blonde and Bullet Train. The film stars The Rock, aka Johnson, Jason Statham, Idris Elba, and Vanessa Shaw. So, my thoughts on this movie is that I find that if we were to take out the context of the Fast and Furious franchise, it's a fun spy film that's self aware with the humor. But if we were to look at it in context of the series, it's a bit disappointing because really we don't have like cars in a prominent role compared to the other movies, but they are featured, but they don't play a big role in these movies. So let's get into why I love Hobbs and Shaw. Well, first and foremost, Hobbs and Shaw. So clearly, like the chemistry between the leads is evident, which is shown too, like from the Fate of the Furious during the prison fight sequence. So I'm assuming that because you know how that scene specifically was received, that's what inspired the spin-off, but probably also too because of the drama that happened between The Rock and Vin Diesel. Oh, that helped too, but but I think it's mainly because of the prison fight sequence that's why we got this movie. And I love how there is a contrast between our leads, especially when in the opening sequence where we see the split screen of them, in their day about, where we see both of them wake up, where Hobbs is alone while Shaw he's with a lady. And then for breakfast, Hobbs eats coffee grounds, which I don't get that choice, while like with Shaw, like he has an omelet, I'm assuming, and then they all go about, and then they both get um, calls like to interrogate people for something. While with Hobbs, he's requiring about the virus, while with Shaw, he is requiring about Etion. And I love how too, in terms of technical aspects, how they use different lighting. While like Hobbs is more warmer tones, while like with Shaw's like colder. I think probably to show like the locations, because you see in London it's rainy, it's dark, while in Los Angeles it's bright and sunny. So I thought, yeah, like having showing the contrast between the two, but they do have some commonalities. So I thought that one was great. I love how this movie is a throwback to like the 80s and 90s action movies specifically, because we see throughout the movie they constantly, like with Hobbs and Shaw, throw jabs or insults towards each other. I would say like my favorite is like when they're first meeting where they call each other the A words. So I thought, yeah, that was hilarious. And I love to, yeah, the instant one liners. I'm a fan of one liners myself. Highlights include on Black Superman. I mean, which is kind of true with Brixton, and also when Shaw says during the opening credits, "I'm what you call a champagne problem." I thought that was cool. Yes, and also too, we see egos where they're all trying to one up each other, which is playful. So, for example, when Hobbs and Shaw are breaking into the facility to get Hattie, they have to, I guess, break in. So how they do it is that Hobbs has to deal with one henchman because they both go through different doors, while with Shaw, like he has to go through multiple henchmen. And it was hilarious that like after when Hobbs beats up the henchman, he looks at Shaw fighting with the others, and he he pretends to be bored. But I'm sure he admires him, but does not want to admit it. So that it's hilarious, but also is cool at the same time too, because it shows like their different personalities. I mean, not just as the characters, but as the actors as well. And the villain, obviously, like with Brixton, he wants to be taken like seriously, but then our heroes are like, no, which is cool. Yeah. Which you do see that in a couple of action movies from those eras, but yeah, that, that was hilarious. And I love too how with some of the action scenes, the use of the slow mo is used well. I would say with the final fight sequence between Brixton and Hobbs and Shaw, that one was cool because you have like the rain going about in slow motion while them like showing the slow mo like of the punches and the kicks. Because I do appreciate that as an action movie, we get to see stuff clearly. I mean, it does help that the movie is that the director it comes from the stunt world, so obviously, like he knows what he's doing with those scenes. So I really appreciate with action scenes we get to see like the moves clearly, while also too like with the cinematography that shows clearly without resorting to a lot of handheld or shaky cam. I enjoyed the supporting characters. So with Hattie, which is played by Vanessa Shaw, who I guess she did Mission Impossible Fallout came out before this movie, and I thought she held her own with this movie because particularly in the fight scene between her and Hobbs, like it shows that yeah, like she is capable of doing. Of holding her own per se as the character, and yeah, even though like she she does be the damsel in distress, like she is capable at defeating the bad guys. So love Hattie, and hopefully she does come back in future installments, whether it's within the spin-off with Hobbs or with the main franchise if she has to interact with Deckard or Owen. Other supporting characters, I liked Agent Dinkley, which is played by Kevin Hart. That one's more like of an extended cameo, so I thought he was a cool character, and I also enjoyed Lone. I can't remember if it's Lone or Lore. That's played by Ryan Reynolds. So I thought, yeah, that was cool, and they have like a shared history. So that one, yeah, was interesting. And also too, Brixton, played by Idris Elba, because even though he's more of the like the henchman villain, he's also threatening like as a bad guy, and he of course holds his own like when when he's in scenes where he has the commanding presence and him going after his targets, and that yeah, he's cool. And I liked there was a scene when he's chasing after Hobbs and Shaw. He's on his motorcycle, and then he goes underneath the truck. I thought that moment was cool. It might be a bit CGI at times, but if it was actually done practically, I'm like, wow, very impressive, because that one is all about timing, and if you miss your mark, it's pretty much it. But I enjoyed that one. And I loved how this movie is about essentially old school versus new school, particularly like when during Act Three, when we see like Hobbs visiting his home, where we see his family and all that stuff. Because it was quite hilarious, but also interesting that his mom got rid of the guns in favor of spears because she's not a fan of gun violence. So, but then also too, it shows that with those weapons, they are effective. Like especially like when they are confronting Brixton and the rest of the bad guys on the island. So I thought that whole sequence was cool. I would say it was one of my favorite sequences of this film, and I love too how we see Samoan culture. I thought like the little dance that Hobbs does with his family. Like it was a bit of a nod to the soccer scene where his daughter and her team do like the threatening dance towards the rival team in the Fate of the Furious. So that one, yeah, I really enjoyed, and I would love to see more of that in the future. And it was interesting too how like with Etion they have guns but they have chips. So I thought, yeah, that's cool. But again, it makes sense since with Etion they're really into technology and control, so it made sense for them to have those types of weapons. And lastly, what I liked is Etion. So obviously like they're a big threat as an organization, similar to Spectre in the 007 movies, or you could say like with Skynet in Terminator 2, because essentially they want to control people by turning them into cyborgs, and essentially they want to do like mass genocide to, as they say, eliminate the weak, and I guess they deem whoever they seem fit to fit that criteria essentially. And because in ways though, because I just watched Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, so there were some parallels between them and the High Evolutionary. And even though like we don't see here people essentially being used as experiments like in Guardians 3, but it was but assuming that if this continues on, I assume like we'll probably see more of that, of Eton wanting to control people. But it seems like they're using like the whole virus as a MacGuffin, so we'll see what happens. Now in terms of criticisms, so as I mentioned at the beginning, that if we look at this as like a ordinary action film, amazing job. But if we're looking in context of the franchise, disappointing, because well, we see that with the franchise, essentially from Fast Six onwards, they're going more of the spy uh, route direction, which I mean, it does not make sense, but whatever, I guess. And I just wish that, like with the other movies, that they have cars as an integral role. But since here, like we focus on Hobbs and Shaw, like who do not come from that world, like I guess it does not make sense to have them be into cars. So that's why I'm kind of like conflicted with this movie. So again, yeah, I don't know. Like I think like there could have been more use of the cars. Maybe like they have to use an informant, that's into cars or something. I don't know. And yeah, there were some couple questions I had. So with Hobbs, so at the end of the Fate of the Furious, like after being like framed, and then he got his job back, but then at the end he decided to leave his job to spend time with his daughter. But then here, like, um is he freelance because he decided to go after someone to get more information about the virus, which I'm like, if you're not a DDS agent, why would you care about that? And then, like in the movie, like it mentions that he's a DDS agent. So I'm just wondering, did he go back to that? And I'm just wondering, if so, like, is the daughter upset? But again, based on the interactions he has with his daughter, she doesn't seem upset. I don't know, but because it would have been better if, let's say, they made him as like a private investigator where he does jobs like on the side. So like maybe here that he's doing work for a client, and then it somehow leads him to the virus, and then leads him to Shaw, and then, you know, move on from there. But I don't know. That part left me a bit confused. Um, with Deckard, I was confused about why he's going after Etion, because in the movie they mentioned that, yeah, he has history with Brixton. I guess they used to work for each other, but then after, when um, Deckard left. I think he was some sort of agent or something. I can't remember. Where I guess the agency wanted him dead, which was led by Brixton, that I guess wanted to kill him, which fell through. But then Deckard, he killed Brixton, and then I guess Brixton becomes revived as a cyborg, essentially, that works with Etion. So I did not get why Decker wanted to go after Etion in the first place, because he seems to be freelance as well. I don't know. um, yeah. Also, too, I just wondered, since we have his sister, of Deckard's sister Hattie, and then his mother, Queenie, like, who's essentially in jail throughout this movie. Like, where's Owen? Like, where is he up to? Because he's alive after in the eighth movie, which again, that does not make sense. So I'm just wondering, like, why didn't he show up here? Like, was there a scheduling conflict, or was it a creative choice? I don't know. And lastly, the humor. While I do enjoy the cheesiness of it at times, I just feel like at the same point it does become a bit too much. I felt they could have used more of the rule of threes, as opposed to keep going on and on with the same types of jokes. An example is when Hobbs and Shaw are integrated by Brixton. I felt like the more uses of them throwing jabs towards each other and then towards Brixton, I thought it became a bit too much and tiresome. Like, they could have trimmed it down and used them more wisely. Now, in terms of future expectations, so I think not long after this movie came out, a sequel was announced because it did well in terms of box office. And I'm going to assume that they're going to continue more like with Etion, with that subplot. So I'm going to assume that Etion essentially is going to be like the big bad. And then they tease that, oh, Etion has history of Hobbs. So I'm like, maybe, because since like we don't know anything about Hobbs's wife, or like the mother of his kid, because maybe Etion killed Hobbs's wife, or maybe like Hobbs like arrested someone as a DDS agent that was connected to Etion. So I think, yeah, that could be explored more. And then, as I mentioned, that Etion could essentially be like an organization like Spectre, where they have multiple assets in place, where they do all these like missions. Essentially, they want to control the world and all that stuff. So that's something they could explore. Also, too, I would have preferred, instead of having like the CIA, they could have used Mr. Nobody's organization. But I don't know, like, if they weren't allowed to because that's connected to the main franchise, or if that was a creative choice. Again, I don't know, because I would have preferred, maybe with Ryan Reynolds' character and Rob Delaney's character, they be working under Mr. Nobody instead of the CIA, since again, with Hobbs and Shaw are both freelance. So hey, and also too, I would have liked. I mean, this is going to be unlikely, but I would like to see Hobbs do a cameo in Fast 10, because we know he's not going to be in this upcoming Fast 10 movie. I mean, but again, that's not going to happen because of the feud between The Rock and Vin Diesel. Because apparently, I guess, after all that backlash, Vin Diesel he posted something on Instagram, essentially wanting The Rock to come back to series and used, I guess, Paul Walker and all that stuff. But then The Rock refused because he viewed it as manipulation. He's like, nope. So he's probably not going to come back to the main franchise anytime soon unless if they resolve this behind the scenes. But again, anything is possible. So we shall see. We shall see. All right, so that pretty much concludes this talk on Hobbs and Shaw, and also too on the Fast and Furious franchise. I would love to know, what do you think about Hobbs and Shaw? Like, what do you think of it in context of the franchise? Do you have any favorite scenes, or favorite moments, or favorite aspects? I would love to know. Post them in the comments section, and also too, I'll be posting a link. To my rankings of the franchise I did on Letterboxd. I'll include Fast 10 in the rankings as soon as I see it. Like, I'll probably would have seen it by the time this video comes out on YouTube. So that'll be interesting. And also, too, the link where you guys watch the movie will be in the description along with my socials. And I want to say thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I will catch you on the next one.